Hi there, boys and girls. Here's another Bible story adventure. Say, did you hear that? Lions. You know what our story is now? Sure, you guessed it. Daniel in the lion's den. Listen. Long, long ago, Babylon defeated Israel in battle and took many Israelites captive. One of these was a boy named Daniel who loved the Lord and served him with all his heart. And God was with Daniel. So it wasn't long before he was given a very special honor. King Nebuchadnezzar chose Daniel and 3 of his friends to help rule over the kingdom. Shortly after that, the king had a strange dream. But when morning came, he'd forgotten it. He was very troubled, so he asked his wise men and magicians to tell him the dream. But they couldn't. And that made the king very angry, and he made a startling announcement. Hear ye! This is the king's command. The wise men and magicians of the land have failed the king. Therefore, they shall be put to death. That meant that Daniel and his friends would be put to death too, because the king counted them among his wise men. But they asked God to show them the king's dream, and he did. And Daniel went straight to the king and said, King Nebuchadnezzar, I have come to tell you your dream. Why, that's impossible, Daniel. The wisest men in the land haven't been able to tell me. Ah, but hear me, O king. There is a God in heaven who reveals secrets. He has shown me your dream. Why, that cannot be. Nevertheless, let me hear it. So Daniel told the dream and the meaning of it, and it was just the way the king had dreamed it. Then the king said to Daniel, Now I know that your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings. After that, the king made Daniel one of the chief rulers over Babylon. But before long, Nebuchadnezzar died, and his son became king. The new king was on the throne only for a little while, and then Babylon was defeated in battle, and a man named Darius became king. Daniel didn't know what to expect from the new ruler. He wondered what would happen to him now. Maybe the new king would make him a slave or put him in prison. Maybe he would kill him. But God was with Daniel, and the new king didn't harm him one bit. Instead, he made him the highest ruler in the land. But the princes of the realm and presidents, too, became very jealous of Daniel, and one of them thought of a way to get rid of him. So he went to the king and said, O king, live forever. Hear the message that I bring you.
Speak. The king will hear.
The princes and presidents have written a new law.
A new law?
Here, O king, this is it. Whoever asks anything of any god or man but you, O king, shall be cast into the lion's den.
Yes, that is good. That pleases me very much.
Then, O king, sign the writing. Let it become the law of the land.
Yes, I shall do it gladly. The people shall have no god but their king.
So the king signed the decree, and it became the law. Daniel heard about it, and he knew if he prayed to his God anymore, he would be thrown to the lions. But he wouldn't stop worshiping God for anyone, not even the king. So he prayed 3 times a day, just as he always had. And the wicked princes who wanted to get rid of Daniel heard him pray. Of course, that was just what they wanted. So they went straight to the king, and their leader said to him, O king, did you not sign a decree that he who prays to any god or man but you shall be thrown to the lions?
What you say is true.
Hear me then, O king. We have seen one who refuses to obey your law.
What? Is there rebellion in my kingdom?
There is one who rebels, O king.
And who is that?
Daniel, one of the Hebrew captives.
Daniel?
Yes, O king. He prays 3 times a day. He must be thrown to the lions.
But I cannot punish one I love so greatly.
The law is written. It cannot be changed.
Yes, the law is written, but there must be some way to save Daniel.
The law cannot be broken, O king. Daniel must die.
Well, I fear you're right. Daniel has broken the law. He must be thrown to the lions.
So the king commanded his servants to bring Daniel to the lion's den. And he met Daniel there and spoke to him while the lions roared angrily nearby.
Oh, Daniel, why have you done this? Why did you not obey my law?
I must be true to my God, even before my king.
You know what the punishment is?
Yes, O king. But my God will be with me, even in the lion's den.
The lions do not fear your God, Daniel, and they're very hungry.
I'll be true to God no matter what comes, O king.
And I trust the God you serve will deliver you. Are you ready, Daniel?
Yes, my lord. I am ready.
May your God protect you. My servants, take Daniel and cast him into the lion's den.
And they put Daniel in the lion's den and rolled a stone into the entrance. Then the king went to his palace and tried to sleep, but he couldn't. All that night he kept thinking about Daniel. He wondered if the lions had killed him or if his God had saved him. At last morning came, and the king hurried to the lion's den and called out,
Daniel! Oh, Daniel!
O king, live forever.
Oh, Daniel, you're alive.
Yes, my lord. God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths.
Oh, Daniel, I am glad. I am glad.
And the king commanded his servants to take Daniel out of the den. And as soon as they did, the lions began to roar and roar, but Daniel was safe. God had protected him even from hungry lions. And do you know what happened to those wicked princes who tried to get rid of Daniel? Why, the king commanded that they be thrown to the lions. And before they even landed at the bottom of the den, the lions had torn them to pieces. Then the king made a decree and announced it to his people.
Hear your king, O my people. I command that all men in my kingdom worship the God of Daniel. He is the true and living God.
And so, boys and girls, Daniel will always be remembered because he was true to God, even when he knew it might cost him his life. And because Daniel was true to God, many other people came to worship God too. Hi there, boys and girls. Here's another Bible Story Adventure. Say, did you know that some of the most exciting stories in all the world are found in the Bible? That's right. Here's one about a beautiful queen named Esther. Now, the people in this story lived more than 2,000 years ago, but the story's just as true and thrilling as though it happened yesterday. Listen. Once there was a Persian king who chose a beautiful Hebrew captive for his queen. And there was a very wicked man named Haman who was chief over all the king's princes. The people were commanded to bow down to him. But Mordecai, the queen's cousin, refused. This made Haman very angry, and he said to his wife one day,
Who is this Mordecai that he should refuse to obey the king's orders?
He will never bend his knee to you, my husband.
And why not?
Because he bows only to his God and no one else.
So, the king should hear about this, and I'll see that he does.
The wicked prince hurried to the palace and began to tell the king about the rebellious captives.
There's only one thing to do with such stiff-necked people, O king.
You are right, Haman. They must be punished.
Well, I'll pay 10,000 talents to have them put to death.
Keep your silver, Haman. But because you're so eager to have my laws obeyed...
Yes, your majesty?
I'm going to let you punish these people.
I, your majesty?
Yes, Haman. They are at your mercy. Do with them as pleases you best. Oh, that was just what Haman wanted. Now he could carry out his wicked plans. And so he ordered the Persians to kill every Hebrew they could find. Mordecai heard the news, and he asked Esther to beg the king to save their lives, but she refused. She knew if she went to see the king without being called, she might be put to death. But Mordecai told her that God may have made her queen for that very reason, so she could save her people. Esther thought about it a while, and then she said to the messenger,
Go back and tell Mordecai and the people of God to pray. I will ask the king to save the Hebrew captives. If he kills me, then I will die gladly for my people.
The queen kept her promise, and soon she was entering the king's court to plead for her people. Her servants wept, for they knew that they might never see their beloved queen again. And Esther looked very pale as she walked toward the king. In a moment, she would know her fate. If the king raised his golden scepter, she would live. If he didn't, she would die. Nearer and nearer to the king's throne she walked, praying at every step that the king would raise his golden scepter and spare her life. But the king looked very stern and didn't move. Then, when she was almost up to the throne, he spoke. You see, my queen, I raise my scepter.
Oh, thank you, your majesty. I am very grateful.
Make your request, Esther. I will grant it, even to giving you half my kingdom. But Esther didn't want half the kingdom. She wanted to save her people. And this was her plan, to invite the king and Haman to a dinner and then make her request. The king quickly agreed to come, and Haman felt very honored to think that he was invited too. But there was still something that bothered Haman. So he said to his wife one day,
That stubborn Hebrew.
Mordecai still refuses to obey.
Yeah, he does.
Hear me then, my husband. We have a plan for you.
Aha! To that I'll listen gladly.
This is the plan, my husband. Have a gallows made and ask the king to hang Mordecai on it.
A gallows? Yes, a gallows. Have a gallows made and hang Mordecai on it.
Haman built the gallows and thought his troubles with Mordecai would soon be over. But something very strange was happening in the palace. One of the servants was reading to the king about the time Mordecai saved his life. And when the king heard it, he cried out, Stop! What has been done to repay that man? Nothing, O king, nothing. What? Has such a deed gone unrewarded? Tell me, how shall I wonder who that is. It must be Haman. He has an appointment with your majesty. So he has. I'd almost forgotten. Well, show him in. Haman felt very happy as he entered the court. He was sure his request to hang Mordecai would be granted. But he didn't know what the king was planning. No, he didn't know what the king was planning. When when the king saw Haman, he asked him what should be done for someone who was to be highly honored. Now, Haman was a selfish old prince, always thinking about himself. Of course, he thought the king wanted to honor him, so he said, "O king, let this one you wish to honor wear the royal robes." Yes. "And the royal crown, and let him ride through the streets on the king's favorite horse." That is good, Haman. "And let thy servants shout to the people, 'This is the man the king delights to honor.'" That is very good, Haman. Now, Haman. "Yes, your majesty, yes." "Go and do all this for Mordecai, the man who saved my life." So the wicked old prince had to do all these wonderful things for the man he hated and wanted to kill. And then, after he had honored Mordecai, he went to the queen's dinner with the king. And as they sat at the table, the king said, "Now, my queen, what is the request you wish to make?"
O king, I beg of you to save my people.
"The Hebrew captives? Why, what danger are they in?"
A very wicked man has plotted against them, O king.
"What is this?"
He will not be satisfied until he has killed them all.
"Who dares to do such a thing in my kingdom?"
Who dares to do it, your majesty? There, O king. There is the wicked enemy.
"You, Haman, my trusted servant." The king was so angry he got up and walked into his garden. And when he came back, he found Haman begging the queen to save his life. And just then one of the servants said to the king, "Hast thou heard, O king, of the gallows Haman built?" "Gallows? Gallows? What for?" "To hang Mordecai, O king." "What? To hang the man who saved my life?" "That is what Haman planned, your majesty." "Hear my orders, then." "Yes, your majesty." "Take Haman this very day and hang him. Let him die on the gallows he built for Mordecai." And so the good Queen Esther, who trusted God, was able to save her people. And the wicked prince who wanted to kill the people of God was put to death on the very gallows he built for someone else. Say, did you like that? Good story, huh? Well, you know, boys and girls, the Bible's full of stories like that. Yes, sir. Hi there, boys and girls. Here's another Bible Story Adventure. Once there was a giant named Goliath. He was almost 10 feet tall and so terrible that everybody was afraid of him. Now, Goliath was the champion of the Philistine army that was fighting God's people. And every morning and evening for many days he came out and shouted his challenge. "Hear me, you Israelites. Choose one of your men to come and fight me. If he kills me, the Philistines will be your slave. But if I kill him, you will serve us the rest of your lives." You can just imagine how scared those Israelites were. They knew they didn't have anyone that could kill Goliath. Even their king Saul didn't know what to do. But one day he heard of a young shepherd boy named David who had said he wasn't afraid of the terrible giant. So Saul sent for him right away. And when David came into the king's tent, he said,
"Tell the people they don't have to be afraid anymore, O king. I'll fight the giant."
"You, David? Why, you're only a boy."
"I know I'm only a shepherd lad, O king, but God will be with me."
"Yes, David, I know that."
"I remember once when I was tending my sheep, a lion came and stole one of my lambs."
"And you drove him away, David?"
"No, my lord. I killed him."
"But even a lion is not as terrible as this giant."
"Once I killed a bear, too, O king."
"Ah, but Goliath is worse than 10 bears.
"God saved me from the bear and the lion, and he can deliver me from this ungodly Philistine, too."
Your trust is in God, David. I can say no more. Go fight this giant, and the Lord be with you." Then Saul put his own armor on David and gave him a sword. But David refused to take them. And do you know what he did? He went down to a little brook and picked up 5 stones. And then, with his shepherd's rod and a sling and those 5 little stones, that brave shepherd boy went out to fight the giant Philistine. Now, the giant was well protected. He had his brass armor on from head to foot, and he carried a spear that was big enough for 2 men instead of 1. So you can just imagine what he thought when he saw who was coming to fight him, a boy who didn't even have a sword. He stood in front of his cheering army and cried out,
"Am I a god that you should come to fight me with sticks? I'll chop your head off and feed your body to the birds."
You come with a sword, Goliath, but I come in the name of the Lord of hosts.
I defy the God of Israel.
Today he will deliver you into my hand. I'll slay you and cut off your head.
You, a shepherd boy, you talk of killing Goliath.
All the earth will know this day that there is a God in Israel.
Who is God? I am Goliath.
You'll learn who God is.
Why, I'll kill you. Throw your body to the beast.
I'm not afraid, even if you are a giant. And I'm not alone. The Lord is with me.
Then the big giant raised his awful spear and started toward David. He was so heavy, the whole earth seemed to shake with every step he took. Closer and closer and closer he came. David waited. He knew the giant could kill him with 1 blow, but he trusted God to protect him, and he put a stone in his sling and threw it with all his might. It hit the giant right in the head. He fell to the ground with a terrible crash. And before he could get to his feet, David rushed over to him, took his own big sword, and cut off his head. David was able to kill the giant and win the victory for the Israelites that day, not because he was so strong or wise, but because he trusted in God. King Saul was very happy because David had saved his people, and he took him to the palace to live. There David met Jonathan, the son of Saul, and they liked each other so much they promised to be friends as long as they lived. Then Saul made David the captain of his armies, and soon the people loved him more than they loved Saul, their king. That made Saul very jealous. And then one day Jonathan came to David and said, "I've come to warn you, David.
Warn me?
Your life is in danger. My father has vowed to kill you."
Jonathan, what have I done that Saul should be so angry with me?
"I don't know, David, but I heard him tell his plan to kill you.
Then I will hide until his anger is over.
And I'll talk to my father and see if he won't be to you as he was before." So Jonathan went to Saul and reminded him of all the good things David had done. Saul remembered, and to show David that he was sorry, he invited him back to the palace to play his harp. David was happy to know that Saul was still his friend, but when he got to the palace and started to play, Saul suddenly became very angry again, and he took his spear and threw it at David with all his might. Now when Saul threw his spear, God was with David, and it missed him and went into the wall, and David escaped. Before long, he saw Jonathan and said,
Jonathan, what have I done to your father that he wants to kill me?
"He's jealous of you, David."
But you are still my friend?
"Well, of course. Haven't we promised to be friends until we die?"
But your father, doesn't it matter to you that he hates me?
"Even that can never change our friendship."
Then do something for me, Jonathan.
"I'll do anything you ask, David, because you're my friend."
Hear me then, Jonathan. Tomorrow is the new moon, and I should eat with the king.
"Yes, David. He'll be expecting you."
But I'll not be there. I'm going to hide for 3 days.
"Hide?"
Yes, Jonathan. And I want you to watch the king and see if he misses me.
Well, suppose he does, David.
Let me know whether he's still angry with me.
Well, you can depend on me, David. If my father plans evil against you, I'll tell you.
But Saul might kill us both if he sees us together.
Well, he won't, David.
How can you be so sure?
Well, here's my plan. You hide in the field for 3 days, and then go down to the stone Ezel.
And wait for a message?
Yes. I'll bring you word.
But how?
Listen carefully. I'll come to the stone Ezel and shoot 3 arrows.
Yes.
Then I'll send a boy to pick them up. If I say to him, "The arrows are beyond you," flee for your life, David.
That will mean that Saul still wants to kill me?
Yes. But if I say to the boy, "The arrows are on this side of you," then you'll know that Saul will not hurt you. So David hid in the field, and Jonathan went back to the palace. And the next night when the king sat down to eat, he didn't say anything about David. But the second night he was very angry because David wasn't there. He even tried to kill his own son. But Jonathan escaped and went out to the field where David was. He shot 3 arrows just like he said he would, and sent a boy to pick them up. And then he called out so David could hear, "Look and see, lad. Isn't the arrow beyond you?" Then Jonathan sent the boy home and met David near the rock. They promised again to be friends as long as they lived, but soon they had to say goodbye, and Jonathan went back to the palace. David kept hiding for a long time, and God protected him. But Saul and Jonathan were killed in battle, and then David, the shepherd boy who loved the Lord and was true to him, became king of Israel in Saul's place. Hi there, boys and girls. Here's another Bible Story Adventure. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago, there was a great captain called Naaman. He lived in the land of Syria, and he was the king's favorite because he had won so many battles. He was brave and rich and famous, but he wasn't happy. You know why? Because he had a terrible disease, leprosy. It made him very sad to think that he could never get well. And it made Mrs. Naaman sad, too. One day, the little Hebrew captive maid who waited on her saw how unhappy she was and said,
"Oh, my mistress, what makes you so sad?" "I shall always be sad. My husband has leprosy. He can never be healed."
I know how he can be healed.
"Oh, no, my child. Don't you know that no one has ever been cured of leprosy?"
The prophet of God can heal him.
"No one can ever heal him."
The prophet can. He's God's servant and has done many wonderful things already.
Someone told Naaman's king, the king of Syria, what the little captive maid had said. Now the king loved Naaman, and he was willing to do anything he could to help him get well. So he sent a servant to another king, the king of Israel, with all kinds of wonderful presents and a letter about Naaman. The king of Israel read the letter, and he was very troubled. When Elisha, the prophet of God, heard how troubled the king was, he went straight to the palace to see him, and he said, "It has been told me that my lord the king has received a letter and is greatly troubled."
It's true, Elisha. My heart is in sore distress. There's none that can help. Never since I came to the throne have I been so heavy-hearted.
Why, O king?
Because of what the king of Syria has asked me to do.
Is it so impossible?
He must think I'm God that he asks me to heal a man of leprosy.
He has asked you to do that?
He has. One of his officers, Captain Naaman, has leprosy, and he wants me to heal him.
And if you don't, my lord?
If I don't, Elisha, I'm afraid he'll start war with us, and we'll be lost.
Send Captain Naaman to me, O king. I'll show him that there is a prophet of God in Israel. The king of Israel sent word to Naaman and asked him to visit Elisha. So Naaman, the great captain, came riding in his chariot. When he got to Elisha's house, he stopped at the door and waited for the prophet to come and meet him. But Elisha didn't come. He sent a servant instead. And the servant told Naaman to wash himself 7 times in the Jordan River and he'd be cured. Now, that wasn't the way Naaman expected to be treated. He was used to having people make a big fuss over him, and he thought Elisha himself would come out and heal him. So when he saw the servant and heard his message, he became very angry and cried out to his own servants who were standing nearby, "Does this prophet know who I am? How does he dare to treat me like this?
I can't understand it, my lord.
Why, I thought he would do something great and wonderful.
You were worthy of it, my master.
Why, I thought he'd come out and call on the name of the Lord his God and raise his hand and heal me."
He told you how you can be healed, my lord, if you will pardon my saying so.
What? I should go down into that muddy Jordan? Why, I wouldn't do that for anyone in the world.
But it's your chance to be healed, my lord.
Don't we have 2 rivers in Damascus?
Yes, my lord.
Well, what's the matter with them? Aren't they just as good as this dirty old Jordan?
That might be, my lord,
I'll never go down into that Jordan River. No, not as long as I live. Naaman was so angry he was going to go back to his own land without doing what the man of God had asked him to do. But his servant pleaded with him.
My master,
Yes?
what if the man of God had asked you to do some great thing?
Why, then I would have done it, of course.
But what he asked is so easy.
Well, that's just it. It isn't worthy of a man of my position.
But even so, my lord, I think you should do it.
What? The great Naaman should humble himself to go down into that muddy river?
Is it better to go through life with leprosy?
No. No. I can't stand to have this leprosy the rest of my days.
Then will you do it, my master? Will you do as the good man of God has said?
Well, I'll do it. But I know it won't help. It won't help me one bit. So Captain Naaman and his servants went to the Jordan River, and Naaman stepped out of his chariot and into the water. And his servants said to him,
The man of God commanded you to dip 7 times, my lord.
"I'll dip once. That'll be enough." There, you see? Look at my hands. Do they look any different?
No, my lord.
I told you this is just a lot of foolishness.
Try it again, sir.
Why should I try it again? The first time didn't help at all.
If you will pardon my reminding you, sir, the man of God commanded you to dip 7 times.
Well, I'll do it once more, but it won't do any good, I tell you. It won't do any good.
Let me see your hands now, sir.
What did I tell you? There's just as much leprosy as there ever was.
But, my lord, you must dip 5 more times.
Oh, I'll go down just once more. If I don't see any change this time, we'll go back home.
Now, sir, just 4 more times.
Oh, I've had enough of this. That prophet is just making a fool of me.
There won't be any harm in doing it as many times as the prophet commanded, if you will forgive my saying so, my lord.
So finally Naaman decided to dip himself 4 more times. Down he went into the muddy water once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 7 times altogether. And when he came up the 7th time, his servant looked at him and cried,
My lord, the prophet was right. You were healed. You were healed.
"Oh, why, this is most remarkable. I've never seen anything like it."
Your skin is clean. It's just like a little child's. The prophet was right.
Yes, the prophet was right. And we're going back to tell him that he was. So Naaman and his servants went back to look for Elisha. When they found him, Naaman cried out, "Now I know that there's no other God in all the earth but the God of Israel. I will never offer sacrifices to other gods again. I will serve no other God but the God of Elisha." And that was the story of Naaman, the great captain who was healed of leprosy.